The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, tucked between a gas bill and a grocery store flyer. It was thick, cream-colored cardstock, the kind of paper that whispers of money spent without a thought. Her fingers, still smudged with potting soil from her balcony herbs, trembled as she traced the embossed, swirling calligraphy. Mr. Leo Vance and Ms. Chloe Parrish request the pleasure of your company at their marriage. It had been exactly 112 days since their divorce was finalized. 112 days since he had promised her this was about him needing to find himself, not about finding someone else. The silence in Maya's new apartment was a physical presence. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a shared life winding down at the end of the day. It was an aggressive, echoing void that amplified the hum of the refrigerator and the distant wail of a city siren. This one-bedroom unit on the 4th floor of a walk-up was all she could afford after the split. It was a place to exist, not to live. The walls were a sterile white, a blank canvas she had no energy to fill. Her life's vibrant colors had been packed into cardboard boxes, and only the muted grayscale essentials had been unpacked. For 12 years, her world had been Leo and Maya. It was a single, hyphenated entity. He was the brilliant, charming architect with a rising star, and she was his supportive wife, the talented landscape designer who'd put her own business on the back burner to help him build his. She'd managed his chaotic schedule, hosted dinners for potential clients, and turned their shared house into a sanctuary, a beautiful living portfolio of their combined talents. She'd believed their foundation was unshakable, built on late-night conversations, shared dreams whispered in the dark, and the easy comfort of knowing another person completely. Then Chloe Parrish had entered their lives. She was a junior marketing consultant hired to rebrand Leo's firm. She was everything Maya wasn't: sharp, relentlessly ambitious, with a wardrobe of tailored dresses and a laugh that seemed to sparkle. Leo had called her a firecracker, essential for the business. Maya had tried to befriend her, inviting her for dinner, only to watch Chloe's effortless charm captivate her husband. She saw the way Leo's eyes followed her, the way he'd lean in a little closer, the private jokes that started to form between them, leaving Maya on the outside. "It's not about her, May," he had insisted, his face a mask of pained sincerity, the night he'd packed his bags. "It's about me. I'm suffocating. I've lost who I am. I just need space to figure things out. This isn't the end for us. It's just a pause." She had clung to that word. Pause. A pause was temporary. A pause had an end. Now, holding the wedding invitation, the word felt like the cruelest lie he had ever told. The heavy cardstock was a tombstone for their marriage, and the calligraphy was the epitaph. She sank onto her small, lumpy sofa, the invitation lying flat on her lap. Her gaze drifted to a framed photo on her bookshelf, the only one she'd kept out. It was from their trip to Italy 5 years ago. They were standing on a sun-drenched terrace overlooking the Amalfi coast, Leo's arm wrapped tightly around her, both of them beaming with a happiness that felt almost sacred at the time. Now it looked like a portrait of two strangers. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was her best friend, Sarah. Maya ignored it, knowing Sarah's well-intentioned outrage would only make the pain sharper. She didn't want to hear, "I told you so," or "he's a monster." She just wanted to understand. What was the flaw in her that had made him leave? What magic did Chloe possess that she so profoundly lacked? She had given him everything: her love, her loyalty, her career. He had taken it all and handed it to someone else. The private, intimate moments were what haunted her the most. The time she'd nursed him through a severe bout of pneumonia, sleeping in a chair by his bed for a week. The way he'd held her after her father's funeral, letting her cry until she had nothing left. The quiet Sunday mornings with coffee and the newspaper, their feet tangled together. Had it all been a performance? A lie she had been too blind to see. Slowly, deliberately, she picked up the invitation again. The ceremony was to be held at the Botanical Gardens, a place she and Leo had often visited for inspiration. He was marrying his new bride in the shadow of their shared memories. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was an erasure. He wasn't just moving on. He was rewriting their entire history, and she wasn't even a footnote. A single tear fell, landing on the embossed lettering of Chloe's name, making the ink bleed just a little. It was then that the profound, gut-wrenching grief finally gave way to something else. It was a tiny, cold spark in the hollow of her chest. Anger. The silence of the apartment didn't feel like a void anymore. It felt like a cage. And for the first time in 112 days, Maya Evans felt the desperate, undeniable urge to break free. She wouldn't just survive this. She would find a way to live again, far from the ruins of the life he had so carelessly destroyed. The next 6 months were a blur of forced momentum. Maya adopted a mantra: just get through the day. She woke up, went for a run until her lungs burned, showered, and went to her small, rented desk space at a co-working office. She took on any project she could find, designing backyard patios for suburban families, choosing planters for a local coffee shop, revamping a sad-looking community park. The work was small, but it was hers. Each finished project was a tiny victory, a single brick laid in the foundation of a new life. She created a strict set of rules for herself. Rule number 1, no looking at Leo's or Chloe's social media. This was the hardest. The temptation was a constant, itchy phantom limb. She knew with sickening certainty that their profiles would be a curated highlight reel of their perfect new life. A honeymoon in Bali, glamorous industry parties, cozy weekends at their new, minimalist chic home. The very home she and Leo had once sketched on a napkin. Resisting the urge to look was a daily battle, and she didn't always win. On weeknights, fueled by cheap wine and loneliness, she'd find herself scrolling, each photo a fresh stab to the heart. Each picture of Chloe, radiant and triumphant in Leo's arms, reinforced the narrative that Maya was the disposable rough draft and Chloe was the polished, final masterpiece. Her friendship with Sarah was her lifeline. Sarah, a no-nonsense divorce lawyer who had seen it all, refused to let Maya drown in self-pity. "Okay, so he's an egotistical cliché with the emotional depth of a puddle," Sarah said one evening over takeout Thai food, her apartment a welcome refuge of noise and life. "He found a shiny new toy. That doesn't diminish your worth, May. It diminishes his. What are you going to do about it?" "What can I do?" Maya mumbled, pushing a peanut around her plate with a fork. "He won. He got everything he wanted." "This isn't a game with a winner and a loser," Sarah countered, her voice firm. "This is your life, and you are not a spectator. Remember that botanical garden project you talked about? The one for the Children's Hospital Charity Gala? You should pitch for it. It's pro bono, but everyone who's anyone in this city will be there." The idea terrified her. It was a massive undertaking, a centerpiece for the city's most prestigious fundraising event. Her confidence was a fragile, shattered thing, held together with tape and hope. But the thought of it also ignited a tiny spark. It was a chance to do something big, something that was entirely hers, something that couldn't be tainted by Leo's memory. So she did it. She spent 3 weeks working obsessively, fueled by coffee and a desperate need to prove herself. She poured all her pain, her love for her craft, and her latent ambition into the design. She envisioned an enchanted labyrinth, a meandering path through groves of silver birch and glowing moonflowers, with hidden nooks where guests could sit on moss-covered benches. It was whimsical yet sophisticated, a design that told a story. The day she presented her proposal to the gala committee, her hands shook so badly she had to grip the sides of the lectern. She spoke with a passion she thought she'd lost, explaining how the layout was designed to encourage quiet conversation and moments of reflection, a metaphor for the healing journey of the children the hospital served. To her astonishment, they loved it. They chose her design over proposals from 2 of the city's most established landscape architecture firms. Walking out of that meeting, Maya felt a surge of pride so potent It nearly brought her to her knees. It was the first time in over a year she had felt truly seen for her own talent, not as Leo Vance's wife. As the gala date approached, her life became a whirlwind of logistics, late-night site visits, and the thrill of watching her vision come to life. The work was all-consuming, leaving little room for obsessive thoughts about Leo. Yet, they still found a way to creep in. One afternoon, while directing a team of gardeners, she saw an article on her phone's newsfeed. Architect Leo Vance and marketing guru Chloe Parrish, the city's new power couple. The accompanying photo showed them at some awards ceremony, Leo looking dapper and Chloe stunning in a red dress, her hand possessively on his arm. The sight was a punch to the gut, a reminder that while she was slowly, painstakingly rebuilding from rubble, they were already living in a skyscraper. But this time the sting didn't linger as long. She took a deep breath, the scent of fresh soil and damp earth grounding her. She looked at the labyrinth taking shape around her, her creation, her story. For a fleeting moment, their polished public triumph seemed small and distant compared to the real, tangible thing she was building with her own two hands. The gala was in 2 days, and for the first time she wasn't just dreading the future. She was cautiously, nervously looking forward to it. The night of the gala was a symphony of clinking champagne glasses, murmured conversations, and the soft strains of a string quartet. The air was thick with expensive perfume and the heady scent of the night-blooming jasmine Maya had strategically placed at the entrance to her labyrinth. She stood near the edge of the terrace, dressed in a simple but elegant navy blue gown Sarah had forced her to buy. She felt like an imposter, a small-town girl who had wandered into a royal ball. But then she watched as the city's elite, men and women in tailored tuxedos and glittering gowns, stepped into her creation. She saw their faces soften with wonder as they discovered the hidden moss benches and followed the glowing solar-powered orbs that lined the pathways. She overheard snippets of conversation. "Absolutely magical," a woman whispered. "Who designed this?" another asked. Each compliment was a balm on her bruised ego. This was real. She had done this. A tall, distinguished man with silver-streaked hair and kind, intelligent eyes approached her. He was dressed in a perfectly fitted tuxedo, but he wore it with a casual ease that suggested he was more comfortable in a boardroom than a ballroom. "The silver birches were an inspired choice," he said, his voice a calm baritone. "They catch the light beautifully. It feels like walking through a moonlit forest." Maya, startled, turned to him. "Thank you. I wanted to create a sense of escape." "You succeeded," he replied, offering a small, genuine smile. "I'm Daniel Sterling." The name registered instantly. Daniel Sterling was a titan of industry, a self-made billionaire in the tech world, and, as the event's primary benefactor, the man who had ultimately signed off on her project. "Maya Evans," she said, her voice a little breathless as she shook his offered hand. His grip was firm and warm. "I know," he said. "I read your proposal. Your passion for the narrative behind the design was what sold me. It wasn't just about plants and pathways. It was about creating an emotional experience. That's rare." They fell into an easy conversation. He wasn't condescending or flirtatious, but genuinely curious. He asked about her process, her favorite botanicals, the challenges of working with the existing landscape. He listened with an intensity that made her feel like she was the only person in the crowded garden. He spoke about his own company, not with arrogance, but with the same quiet passion she felt for her work. He saw the world in systems and patterns, and he was fascinated by the organic, seemingly chaotic systems of nature she orchestrated. For the first time in years, Maya was having a conversation with a powerful man who wasn't Leo, and she wasn't being introduced as the wife. She was Maya Evans, the designer. The feeling was intoxicating, and then she saw them. Leo and Chloe were standing near the grand fountain at the garden's center, holding court. Chloe was dazzling in a sequined silver dress, laughing that bright, sparkling laugh as she charmed a circle of admirers. Leo stood beside her, a proud proprietary arm around her waist. He looked happy, successful, and utterly complete. The sight was a bucket of ice water, extinguishing the warm glow that had been building inside her. Her breath caught, her confidence evaporated. She was instantly transported back to being the discarded wife, the woman who wasn't good enough. The navy blue dress felt plain, her success with the garden felt small and insignificant. Daniel noticed the shift immediately. His eyes followed her gaze, and a flicker of understanding crossed his face. "Old ghosts?" he asked gently. Maya could only nod, her throat tight. Without a word, Daniel placed a light hand on the small of her back. It wasn't a possessive gesture, but a steadying one. "I believe my company's table is in the opposite direction," he said smoothly, his voice a low anchor in the swirling sea of her anxiety. "And I'm suddenly in the mood for a ridiculously overpriced dessert. Would you care to join me?" He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't press for details. He simply saw her distress and created an escape, just as she had done with her garden. As he guided her away from the fountain and towards the brightly lit pavilion, Maya felt a profound sense of gratitude. For the first time all night, she wasn't just the designer of the enchanted labyrinth. She felt like someone had just led her out of one of her own. The encounter she had been dreading had been neutralized, not by a confrontation, but by a quiet act of kindness from the most unexpected of sources. 3 days after the gala, an email with the subject line, "Sterling Corp Headquarters, Project Proposal," landed in Maya's inbox. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she clicked it open. It was from Daniel Sterling's executive assistant, formally requesting a meeting to discuss her potential involvement in designing the entire 5-acre campus for his new global headquarters. Maya had to read the email 3 times to believe it was real. This wasn't a backyard patio. This was the kind of legacy project that could define a career. It was a budget so large the numbers seemed fake, a scope so ambitious it made her hands tremble. Her first instinct was a tidal wave of panic. "I can't do this. This is too big. I'm not qualified." It was the familiar, insidious voice of self-doubt, the one Leo had so carefully cultivated in her over the years, praising her small, charming projects while positioning himself as the one who handled the serious architecture. Her second instinct was suspicion. Was this pity? Was the billionaire benefactor who'd witnessed her near meltdown at the gala throwing her a charitable bone? The thought was mortifying, a bitter pill that soured the excitement. She didn't want a handout, especially not one born from her visible heartbreak over her ex-husband. She agreed to the meeting, spending the next 48 hours in a frenzy of preparation, determined to prove she was a professional, not a charity case. She researched Sterling Corp's corporate ethos: innovation, sustainability, employee well-being. She studied the architectural renderings of the new building. She walked into the meeting armed with a portfolio and a precarious sense of resolve. Daniel's office was on the top floor, a minimalist space with panoramic views of the city. He wasn't sitting behind his massive desk, but in one of the armchairs near the window, creating a sense of parity. He was dressed in a simple grey sweater and dark jeans, a stark contrast to his black tie gala attire. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Evans," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "Please, call me Daniel." "Maya," she replied, her voice steadier than she expected. He got straight to the point. "I don't believe in wasting time, Maya. I was deeply impressed by your work at the gala, not just the aesthetics, but the philosophy behind it. You created a space that influenced how people felt and interacted. That's what I want for our new headquarters." He laid out his vision. A campus that felt less like a corporate prison and more like a university, with spaces for collaboration, quiet contemplation, and genuine connection to nature. "Why me?" Maya asked, the question escaping before she could stop it. "There are dozens of firms with more experience, with bigger teams." Daniel leaned forward, his gaze direct and unflinching. because those firms would give me something predictable and corporate. They'd check all the boxes. I saw your preliminary sketches for the gala. You threw out the first 3 concepts because you said they lacked a soul. I want someone who looks for the soul of a project." He paused, a knowing look in his eyes. "And let's be clear, this isn't a favor. My board would have my head if I chose a designer based on anything other than perceived merit. This is a proposition. If you take this on, you'll be working with the best architects and engineers in the country. The expectations will be immense, and the pressure will be relentless. I'm not offering you a gift. I'm offering you a challenge." His directness disarmed her. He had seen her vulnerability but was choosing to see her strength instead. He wasn't offering a handout. He was offering a seat at the table. A powerful, terrifying, exhilarating seat. Meanwhile, across town, life in Leo and Chloe's glass house was beginning to show cracks. Chloe's ambition, which Leo had once found so thrilling, now felt like a constant pressure. She was obsessed with their social standing, curating their lives for public consumption. Their home, which was featured in a design magazine, felt less like a sanctuary and more like a set. "Did you see this?" Leo asked one evening, scrolling through a news site on his tablet. He turned the screen towards Chloe. The headline read, "Sterling Corp taps emerging designer Maya Evans for ambitious new eco-campus." Chloe's perfectly made-up face tightened. Maya? His ex-wife? How did she land that? The disdain in her voice was palpable. "I don't know," Leo said, looking at the photo of Maya, a professional headshot he'd never seen before. She looked different, more confident. A strange, unwelcome feeling coiled in his stomach. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. It was a disconcerting sense of irrelevance. He had been the architect of their lives, the one with the grand career. Now she was stepping onto a stage that dwarfed his own, and she was doing it without him. The narrative he had so carefully constructed for himself, the brilliant man who had to leave his comfortable but small life behind for a bigger, brighter love, was beginning to fray at the edges. The Sterling project consumed Maya in the best possible way. The work was a baptism by fire. She was in meetings from dawn until dusk with architects who initially looked at her with skepticism, engineers who questioned her unconventional use of space, and a budget that had more zeros than her own bank account. In the first few weeks, she was plagued by imposter syndrome, convinced that at any moment Daniel would realize he'd made a terrible mistake. But she pushed through the fear. She spent her nights researching sustainable irrigation systems and her weekends studying native plant species. She fought for her vision, for a rooftop garden that would supply the company cafeteria, for a central courtyard designed around a preserved 100-year-old oak tree, for meandering paths that encouraged employees to walk between buildings rather than driving. Slowly, painstakingly, she earned the respect of the team. They started to see what Daniel saw, a designer with a unique voice and an unyielding commitment to her craft. Her professional relationship with Daniel evolved into a tentative friendship. Their work sessions often bled into late evenings, fueled by takeout containers of food spread across blueprints. He was a demanding client, pushing her to defend every choice, but he was also her biggest champion, backing her most audacious ideas against a skeptical board. In these quiet moments, the professional masks would slip. He told her about his own beginnings, building his company from a garage with 2 friends. He spoke of a bitter corporate betrayal early in his career that had taught him to be guarded, to trust actions over words. His stories weren't a plea for sympathy, they were a simple sharing of a past that shaped his present. He was a man defined by logic and control, yet he was fascinated by the untamable organic world she created. Maya, in turn, found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years. She spoke of her passion for design, a passion that had been a casualty of her marriage. With Daniel, she didn't feel the need to shrink herself. He wasn't intimidated by her ambition, he was energized by it. The power imbalance of their respective wealth was undeniable, but it was mitigated by a powerful intellectual connection. A slow-burning warmth started to grow between them, a fragile flame in the demanding crucible of the project. One evening, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She answered, and a voice she hadn't heard in months filled her ear. "May? It's Leo." The sound of his voice was a jolt, a ghost at the feast of her new life. She walked out of her office, seeking the cool night air on the balcony. "Leo," she said, her voice flat, betraying none of the turmoil inside her. I saw the article about the Sterling project," he began, his tone oozing a practiced casualness. "Wow, that's huge. I just wanted to call and say congratulations. I'm really happy for you." The words were right, but the tone was all wrong. It was condescending, as if he, the great architect, was bestowing his approval upon his former pupil. He was probing, trying to understand how she had managed this. "Thank you," she said coolly. "So Daniel Sterling, huh?" he continued, unable to help himself. "He's a pretty big deal. How did you get to know him?" The insinuation was clear, a veiled suggestion that her success was transactional. A cold fury washed over Maya. The old Maya would have been flustered, defensive. The new Maya, forged in the fire of the last few months, was not. "We met professionally, Leo," she said, her voice like ice. "He appreciated my work." There was an awkward silence on the line. He had expected her to be the same broken, pliable woman he had left. Her confident, distant tone had clearly thrown him. "Right, of course," he stammered. "Well, look, I'm glad you're doing okay." "I'm doing better than okay, Leo," she said, and for the first time she knew it was the absolute truth. "I have to go. I have a deadline." She hung up before he could reply, her heart pounding not with pain, but with a strange, exhilarating sense of power. She had not only survived him, she was beginning to thrive in a world he couldn't touch. She looked out at the city lights, a sprawling galaxy of possibilities. The call hadn't sent her spiraling. It had been a confirmation of how far she had come. He was a chapter she had finally, definitively closed. Leo stood in his living room, phone still in hand, the dial tone buzzing in his ear. The finality in Maya's voice had been like a door slamming shut. He had called her expecting to feel a sense of magnanimous closure, the benevolent ex-husband cheering from the sidelines. Instead, he felt dismissed, irrelevant. "Who was that?" Chloe asked, walking into the room. She was wearing a silk robe and scrolling through a home decor blog on her phone, a glass of wine in her hand. "Just a contractor," he lied, tossing his phone onto the sofa. "Make sure they use the south entrance. The landscapers tracked mud all through the foyer last week," she said, not looking up. The disconnect between them was becoming a chasm. Their conversations were no longer about shared dreams, but about logistics, appearances, and the relentless upkeep of their perfect life. Chloe's spending, once a symbol of their success, was now a source of constant, simmering anxiety for Leo. New furniture, a new car, couture gowns for every charity event. It was a performance with a staggering price tag. His architectural firm, once a rising star, had recently lost a major contract to a rival. The financial cushion he'd always taken for granted was starting to feel thin. Chloe's focus, however, was not on their finances. It was on Maya. The Sterling project had made Maya a person of interest in the city. Small articles began to appear about her in design magazines and business journals. For Chloe, who had built her identity on being the shinier, upgraded model, this was intolerable. Maya was supposed to be a footnote in their love story, the sad prologue. Instead, she was writing an entirely new book, and it was threatening to become a bestseller. "It's just so unseemly," Chloe commented one night, pushing a piece of sea bass around her plate at a trendy, overpriced restaurant. Her getting involved with a client, especially one so much older and wealthier. It's obvious what's going on. "We don't know that anything is going on," Leo said, weary of the topic. "Oh, please, Leo," she scoffed. "A woman like Maya doesn't land a contract like that on merit alone. He's her pet project, her charity case." Chloe's obsession culminated in a meticulously planned chance encounter. She had learned from a social acquaintance that Maya and Daniel Sterling had a standing reservation every Thursday night at Aria, a quiet, exclusive Italian restaurant where they often had informal work dinners. Chloe insisted she and Leo go there that same night. "Isn't it a bit stuffy for a Thursday?" Leo had asked. "I'm in the mood for pasta," she'd replied with a breezy finality he knew better than to question. They were seated at a prime table when Maya and Daniel walked in. Maya looked radiant. She was wearing a simple green dress that brought out the color in her eyes. Her hair was up, and she was laughing at something Daniel had said. She carried an air of quiet confidence that was entirely new. There was no trace of the heartbroken woman Leo had left behind. Chloe chose her moment perfectly. As a waiter passed, she stood up, feigning a trip to the restroom, and took a path that led her directly past their table. "Maya? Oh my goodness, what a surprise!" Chloe gushed, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness. Maya's smile tightened, but she remained composed. "Chloe, Leo, hello." Daniel stood up politely, a silent, observant presence. "This must be Daniel Sterling," Chloe said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "It's a pleasure. I'm Chloe, Leo's wife." She emphasized the word wife, turning it into a weapon. "Maya has told me so much about you." It was a lie, of course. Maya hadn't spoken to her since the divorce. "It's so wonderful to see you thriving, Maya," Chloe continued, her eyes doing a slow, condescending sweep of Maya's simple dress. "We were so worried about you after well, you know. But it seems you've landed on your feet. On both feet, in fact." The insinuation hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Leo, standing awkwardly behind Chloe, felt a flush of shame. This was petty. This was cruel. Maya didn't flinch. She met Chloe's gaze with a cool, level stare. "I have," she said simply. "Thank you for your concern. Now, if you'll excuse us, Daniel and I have some blueprints to discuss." She picked up a menu, a clear, graceful dismissal. The attack had failed to land. Chloe's perfectly crafted barb had been met not with the tears or anger she'd expected, but with a wall of serene indifference. Flustered, Chloe forced a tight smile and retreated back to their table, her social victory turning to ash in her mouth. For the rest of the dinner, a tense silence fell between her and Leo. He watched Maya and Daniel across the room. They were leaning over a large architectural drawing, their heads close together, lost in their own world. They weren't on a date. They were partners. And for the first time, Leo was forced to confront a terrifying possibility. He hadn't just lost a wife. He had let go of an equal. The dinner at Aria was a turning point for Leo. Chloe's blatant cattiness had been ugly, but what truly unsettled him was Maya's transformation. Her composure, her quiet strength. It was a world away from the weeping, pleading woman he remembered from their final, agonizing conversations. He had told himself he was leaving because she was weak, because she leaned on him too much, because her love was a comfortable cage. But the woman across that restaurant was anything but weak. In the weeks that followed, he found his thoughts drifting back to their life together. He had rewritten their history in his mind to justify his departure, focusing on the negatives, her passivity, her reluctance to take risks, the quiet routines that he'd reframed as a rut. But now, other memories surfaced, unbidden. He remembered the way she could calm his anxieties before a big presentation with just a touch. He remembered her fierce intelligence, the way she would debate politics with him for hours. He remembered her unwavering belief in him, a support so constant he had mistaken it for a given. His life with Chloe, which had once felt like a thrilling adventure, now seemed shallow and exhausting. It was a constant performance for an audience of strangers. Their conversations were about appearances, their intimacy was performative, and her love felt deeply, terrifyingly conditional. He was beginning to realize he hadn't traded up. He had traded real for hollow, substance for style. He had chased a fantasy, and now he was living in the empty, beautifully decorated reality of it. Driven by a cocktail of regret and a desperate need for validation, he did what the old Leo would have considered unthinkable. He asked Maya to meet him for coffee. He was shocked when she agreed. They met at a small, neutral cafe halfway between her office and his. She arrived first, already seated with a laptop open. She looked professional, put together. When he sat down, she closed the laptop but didn't put it away. It was a subtle boundary, a clear signal that her time was valuable. "Thank you for meeting me," he began, his voice hoarse. "You said it was important," she replied, her tone neutral. She wasn't giving him an inch. He stumbled through the words he had rehearsed, the selfish, self-serving apology of a man desperate to rewrite his own villainy. "Maya, I need you to know how sorry I am. For everything. The way it ended. It was a mess. I was a mess. I was confused, and I was a coward, and I hurt you terribly." She listened patiently, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug, her expression unreadable. She didn't interrupt. She just let him talk. "I look at you now with this sterling project and everything," he trailed off. "And I see the woman I always knew you could be. I guess I just want to know if you can ever forgive me." He was looking for absolution. He was hoping to find a flicker of the old Maya, the one who had always forgiven his trespasses, the one who had always put his needs first. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment, studying his face. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, clear, and utterly devastating in its honesty. "I hear your apology, Leo," she said, "and I understand that you need to say it. But you need to understand that this forgiveness you're looking for isn't mine to give. It's for you." She leaned forward slightly. "You seem to be operating under a misconception. You think you made a mistake and left me. But you didn't leave me, the woman sitting here today. You couldn't have, because she didn't exist yet." Her words hit him with the force of a physical blow. "The woman you left was your wife," she continued, her voice softening, but losing none of its steely resolve. "A woman who loved you, yes, but also a woman who had made herself small to fit into the space you left for her. A woman who put your dreams ahead of her own. And you know what? You didn't just leave her. You broke her. You shattered her into a million pieces. And I had to spend a year every single day painstakingly picking up those pieces and trying to figure out how to put them back together." She took a slow breath. "And I realized I couldn't. I couldn't rebuild that same woman. So I had to build someone new, someone stronger, someone who doesn't need anyone's approval to know her own worth. That's the woman sitting in front of you today. And she doesn't hate you, Leo. But she doesn't need your apology, and she certainly doesn't have your forgiveness, because she was born from your betrayal. In a strange, painful way, you created her. So thank you." She stood up, gathering her things. "I wish you peace, Leo. I truly do. But my life is no longer about you." She turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving him alone at the table, surrounded by the wreckage of his own making. It wasn't the anger or the tears he might have expected. It was something far more final, indifference. He had come seeking a path back to his own comfort, only to find she had burned the entire bridge and had built a beautiful, thriving city on the other side. Leo drove home from the cafe in a daze. Maya's words echoed in his head. "You didn't just leave her, you broke her." He had spent over a year telling himself a story of noble self-discovery, of finding a love that was bigger and brighter. But Maya had held up a mirror, and the reflection was ugly and selfish. He hadn't been a romantic hero. He'd been a coward who ran away from a life he was too bored to appreciate, and a woman he was too insecure to let shine. He walked into his house, their house, and the sterile perfection of it felt suffocating. The grey marble countertops, the artfully placed coffee table books, the scent of Chloe's expensive Jo Malone diffuser. It all felt like a movie set. Nothing was out of place, and nothing felt real. Chloe was in their walk-in closet, surrounded by shopping bags. "There you are," she said, holding up a shimmering gold dress. "For the Arts Foundation benefit on Saturday. Do you think it's too much?" He looked at her, at the dress, at the mountain of new purchases, and something inside him snapped. The simmering resentment, the financial anxiety, the profound, aching regret. It all boiled over. "Is this all we are now?" he asked, his voice raw. "A series of outfits and parties?" Chloe's smile faltered. She put the dress down. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm tired, Chloe," he said, the words tumbling out. "I'm tired of the performance. I'm tired of pretending this. This is fulfilling." "This is the life you wanted," she shot back, her voice rising. "The one you left your boring little life for." "It wasn't boring," he yelled, shocking them both with his volume. "It was real. It was quiet and it was stable, and she believed in me. Not in the architect of the year, but in me." The name hung in the air, unspoken but deafening. Maya. Chloe's face hardened, her eyes turning to chips of ice. "Don't you dare," she whispered, her voice shaking with rage. "Don't you dare stand there, in the life I helped you build, and romanticize the woman you threw away. You never loved me. You just loved the idea of me. You loved the way I looked on your arm, the doors I could open for you. And you loved my name and my bank account," he retorted, the accusation tasting like poison. The fight was brutal and honest, stripping away the layers of pretense they had wrapped around their relationship. Every hidden resentment, every unspoken insecurity was laid bare. By the end, they were two strangers standing in a beautifully designed cage, the dream shattered at their feet. Across town, Maya was standing with Daniel on the nearly completed rooftop garden of the Sterling headquarters. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over the city. She had told him about her meeting with Leo, recounting the conversation calmly and factually. Daniel listened without interruption, his gaze fixed on her face. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "He doesn't deserve to be a part of your story anymore," he said simply. He then turned to her, his expression serious. "Maya, when I first met you, I'll admit my motives were not entirely pure. I saw your talent, yes, but I also saw an opportunity. Leo Vance's firm was a competitor, and I knew that elevating his recently divorced wife would be a strategic annoyance for him. It was a cold, calculated business decision." Maya's heart sank a little, but she appreciated his honesty. "But then," he continued, taking a step closer, "I got to know you. I saw your resilience, your integrity, your passion. I saw the incredible woman who clawed her way out of the wreckage and built something beautiful. The business side of this became irrelevant very quickly. My feelings for you, however, did not." He took her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "I'm not offering you a project anymore, Maya. I'm offering you a partnership in every sense of the word. A future, but only if it's what you want." It was the question that hung over everything. Was she simply trading one powerful man for another? Was her newfound strength just a reflection of Daniel's influence and resources? She looked at him, at this kind, brilliant, complicated man who had given her a chance when she needed it most. But he hadn't saved her. He had given her the tools and the space, but she was the one who had done the work. She had built this. Her success wasn't his, it was hers. And her future with him wouldn't be about leaning on his strength, but about standing next to him in her own. "I need some time," she said softly. It was the most honest answer she could give. She needed to be sure that her next step was for herself, and not for anyone else. Daniel simply nodded, his eyes full of understanding. "Take all the time you need," he said. "I'll be right here." He wasn't pressuring her. He was respecting her. And in that moment, Maya knew that whatever she chose, it would finally truly be her own decision. 6 months passed, marked by the changing seasons and the steady, exhilarating hum of progress. Maya didn't give Daniel an answer right away. Instead, she threw herself into the final, demanding phase of the Sterling project, and more importantly, into the official launch of her own landscape architecture firm, Terra Firma Designs. Daniel had provided the seed money, not as a gift, but as a formal investment, making him a silent partner. The terms were strict, the business plan was rigorous, and Maya was the majority owner and sole creative force. It was a partnership built on legal documents and mutual respect, not on romantic obligation. This distinction was everything to her. She poured her energy into building her own legacy. She hired a small, brilliant team. They secured 2 more high-profile corporate clients who had been impressed by the buzz around the Sterling campus. She was no longer just a designer, she was a CEO. She was in charge of payroll, client acquisition, and the creative direction of a company that was entirely her own. Some days were terrifying, the weight of responsibility immense, but every day was fulfilling. She was building something that would outlast her, a testament to her vision and resilience. Her relationship with Daniel deepened organically, away from the pressures of the project. They discovered a shared love for quiet weekends, hiking in the nearby mountains, and exploring dusty, forgotten bookstores. He loved her for her mind and her spirit, not for what she could do for his image. She loved him for his quiet support, for the way he saw her not as a project to be fixed, but as an equal to be cherished. When she finally, officially chose to be with him, it was a decision made from a place of strength and wholeness, not of need. The grand unveiling of the Sterling Corpter headquarters was a major city event. Maya stood on a podium beside Daniel, looking out at a sea of journalists, employees, and city officials. She spoke about her vision for the campus, a place where technology and nature could coexist, where innovation was nurtured by biophilic design. Her voice was clear and strong, filled with a confidence that was bone deep. She wasn't the architect's wife or the billionaire's girlfriend. She was Maya Evans, the woman who had turned 5 acres of concrete and steel into a living, breathing work of art. From the back of the crowd, a man watched the live stream on his phone. Leo Vance was thinner now, with a tired look in his eyes. He and Chloe had separated. The divorce was messy and expensive, a bitter end to a dream that had turned toxic. His firm had survived, but it was diminished, humbled. He was rebuilding, just as Maya had. He watched her on the screen, poised and articulate, and felt a profound, aching sense of loss. It wasn't just the loss of her, but the loss of the man he could have been if he had been wise enough to appreciate what he had. There was no bitterness left, only a quiet, painful acceptance. He had chased a fleeting, glittering image of happiness, while she had cultivated the real thing from the ground up, with soil and sunlight and relentless hard work. Later that evening, Maya and Daniel walked through the central courtyard of the now completed campus. The 100-year-old oak tree stood majestically at its heart, its branches reaching towards the sky. The air was filled with the scent of lavender and the gentle sound of water from a recycled rainwater feature. "Terra Firma," Daniel said, squeezing her hand. "Solid ground. You chose the perfect name for your company." Maya smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I had to go through a lot of shaky ground to find it," she admitted. They stood there for a long time, in the quiet heart of the world she had built. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, because her life was no longer a fairy tale. It was something far better. It was real. It was a life she had designed and built herself, a new horizon stretching out before her, filled with endless, beautiful possibility. Maya's journey from the ashes of a devastating betrayal to the pinnacle of her profession is a powerful reminder that our deepest wounds can often lead to our greatest strengths. She didn't just find a new love, She found herself proving that true redemption isn't about revenge, but about rebuilding a life on your own terms. Her story shows that the most beautiful gardens often grow in the most unexpected places, nurtured by resilience, passion, and the courage to start over. What did you think of Maya's incredible transformation? Let us know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with a friend who needs a dose of inspiration, and subscribe for more emotional stories of betrayal, redemption, and the unbreakable power of the human spirit.